Everyone said I was Julian Joe's doormat, even when the tabloids were full of his flings. I clung to our engagement, until the day headlines screamed that he was passionately in love with Chloe Lynn. I was toying with the wedding ring I'd just picked up from the jeweler, and then I threw it away. The news of Julian and Chloe's passionate kiss broke while I was at the jeweler's, picking up our wedding rings. The sales assistant was gushing about my excellent taste. Under the bright lights, the diamond on my ring finger glittered. I stared at it for a moment, then laughed. "No," I said, "my taste is actually terrible." The moment I stepped out of the store, my phone rang. Seeing Julian's name on the screen, I froze. "We're having dinner at the family estate tonight. Don't be late." His voice was cold, and he hung up before I could even reply. That was always his attitude towards me. "What's the cruelest thing done to you in the name of love? Tell me below." First, the heart breaks, then, karma breaks them. Disgusted, as if I were a snake, he never worried I wouldn't show up, because ever since we got engaged, I had bent to his every whim, especially when it came to his family. Julian knew that no matter what, I would always show his grandfather respect. After the call ended, I stood there in silence for a long moment. 5 years of absurdity flashed through my mind. This engagement was never Julian's choice. His grandfather had forced him into it. In the beginning, he was civil enough, seeing me as a fellow victim of circumstance. We'd occasionally have a drink, chat like ordinary friends, but only I knew I had approached him with a purpose. To make this relationship work, I'd spent countless hours learning everything about him. I memorized all his preferences. I forced myself to learn the things he liked, just to have something more to talk about with him. I don't know when, but somewhere along the line, all that was left between us was a chilling indifference. Over the years, Julian was linked to a parade of starlets and influencers. I was always the one who cleaned up the mess, until Chloe Lynn, his childhood sweetheart, returned to the country. Chloe was beautiful, with a bold, outgoing personality that made her popular with everyone, but since childhood, she had always been closest to Julian. After she came back, it was as if the prodigal son had suddenly found his heart. The scandals vanished, all cleaned up without me lifting a finger, but his attitude towards me remained as cold as ever. I didn't care. The end was near anyway. That evening, at the Joe family estate, I arrived right on time. As I got out of my car, I saw Julian leaning against his, impatiently scrolling through his phone, his brow furrowed. "You certainly know how to cut it close," he sneered. I didn't answer, simply walking into the house with him in silence. Julian's grandfather loved having the family together, so we were required to gather here once a month. I'd been to the estate countless times over our 5-year engagement. As rebellious as Julian was, he never dared to disobey his grandfather. "You're here, let's eat," the old man said, smiling warmly as he saw me take Julian's arm. After dinner, Julian was usually pulled into a game of chess with his grandfather. I would take a walk in the small garden to digest, maybe play with the dogs. "Stella, come with me to the study." The words made both Julian and me look up, surprised. Julian paused, giving me a long, unreadable look. I ignored his stare and went straight to the study. "You have something to tell me?" his grandfather asked, sitting down and pouring himself a cup of tea before looking at me. I froze for a second, then understood. He was, after all, a brilliant man who had battled his way to the top of the business world. My face had always been an open book. Realizing this, I decided not to hide it. "The 5 years are up," I said directly. "Julian still despises me. I'm grateful for what you did for me back then, but this was our agreement." Leaving the study, I let out a long breath, a wave of relief washing over me. Then I looked up and saw Julian, not far away. He was shrouded in darkness, a cigarette held between his fingers, its red ember glowing and fading in the night. The smell of smoke made me instinctively frown. In the past, I would have nagged him to put it out, even if he was angry, lecturing him on the dangers of smoking. But now, I just hesitated for a moment, then tried to slip past him. In that instant, he grabbed my wrist. His voice was hoarse from the smoke. He asked, "Stella, how long are you going to keep this up?" I looked up, blinking in confusion. "I've already agreed to marry you. What more do you want? Why would you attack a girl with such vicious words?" My reaction clearly didn't satisfy him. Julian's face grew darker, his grip tightening. I winced, struggling against the pain. "What the hell are you talking about?" It was probably the first time Julian had ever heard me swear or fight back. He was so surprised that he didn't react. I seized the moment to wrench my hand free. "Lately, we'd been fighting constantly. 8 times out of 10. It was because of Chloe." It was obvious she had whispered something in his ear again, And he had come straight to me for a confrontation. 5 years. You'd think even a stone would have warmed up by now. I never wanted to take anyone's place. But clearly, someone else didn't see it that way. With that thought, I took out the custom-made wedding ring. Julian, watch closely. Our engagement is over. Then, before his astonished eyes, I threw the ring out the window. Outside was a man-made lake. In the moonlight, the calm surface rippled for a moment, then settled back into stillness, as if nothing had ever happened. The day after I ended the engagement, I went to the company to hand in my resignation. All these years, trapped by Julian's side, slaving away at this company, I was done. I packed my bags, picked up my paintbrush again, and set off to chase my own dreams. But while I was sketching in the mountains, I got a call from Leo. Leo was Julian's best friend. I don't know what Chloe had told them, but Leo was convinced I had stolen Julian from her. In their circle, he was Julian's closest confidant and the one most hostile towards me. I raised an eyebrow at the call and hung up. A second later, it rang again. I sighed and answered. Stella, Julian's drunk at the Moonlight Bar. You need to come get him. Leo's tone was a command. This wasn't the first time I'd gotten calls like this late at night, in the early hours of the morning. No matter when, I was always the first one to deal with Julian's messes. Some said I was the perfect fiancé for a marriage of convenience, but more people, openly and secretly, called me a doormat. I clutched the edge of my phone, a cold smile on my lips. So what? Leo was clearly not expecting me to ever speak to him in such a cold tone. For Julian's sake, I had always been polite to his friends. Even when I overheard them saying awful things about me, I'd either pretend not to hear or just smooth things over. You, Leo stammered, then repeated himself. Julian's drunk. He's in a bad way. Come pick him up. He's drunk. He's in a bad way. What does that have to do with me? I picked up my brush and made a light stroke on the canvas, my voice nonchalant. Go find Chloe. Julian and I have broken off our engagement. I'm done with him. The words were firm, but this was an obsession that had lasted for years. To completely cut Julian out of my heart, I knew I was in for a long and painful withdrawal. The wind howled outside. I woke from a dream, sitting alone in the darkness for a long time. The scenes from the dream were still vivid, as if they had happened yesterday. An old scar on my arm was a constant reminder that fate was real, but more often than not, it was a cruel fate, a love that was never meant to be. Like Julian and me, I was 8 when I first met Julian. That year was the darkest time of my life. Before I could even understand the world's hardships, my family went bankrupt. Then, my parents were killed in a sudden car accident. Overnight, I went from a treasured princess to an orphan living at the mercy of others. Everyone looked at me with a mixture of coldness and pity. I could hear the relatives who used to smile so warmly at me secretly whispering that I was cursed, that I'd brought ruin to my parents. In the end, it was my uncle who, against his wife's objections, took me in. He saw that I wouldn't speak, so he took me on a trip to get my mind off things. But I got separated from him. By the time it got dark, I still hadn't found my way down the mountain. Instead, I heard a child crying for help. It was a young Julian. Seeing him about to fall, I instinctively reached out to grab him. The small branch we were holding onto snapped under our combined weight. We both tumbled down the slope. In the hazy moonlight, 2 children, 8 or 9 years old, supported each other. We finally found a small cave that offered some shelter from the wind and rain. At night, the cold was biting. Julian and I, hungry and exhausted, huddled close together. He took out the only piece of chocolate he had left. Here, you have it. I'm not hungry. I broke it in half, and we shared it, but it was far from enough. At first, we were able to talk to keep our spirits up, joking that we were now friends for life, bound by this ordeal. You wouldn't have fallen if you weren't trying to save me. Julian's guilty voice echoed in the darkness. I declare, you are the most important friend I'll ever have. We'll be friends forever. Don't worry, my family is rich. I'll work hard to make a lot of money too. I'll never bully you. I'll be good to you for the rest of our lives. At that young age, we were good mimics. In that moment, I copied a line from a TV show. If you're so good to me, what about your wife? My dad gives all his money to my mom. Then you can be my wife. I'll spend it all on you. I'll be good to you. Childish words, not to be taken seriously. I don't know when I fell asleep. When I opened my eyes again, my uncle was holding me, his face etched with anxiety, about to carry me out. Uncle, where's Julian? I tugged at his sleeve, my voice so dry and hoarse I could only whisper. You mean the young master of the Zhou family? He's already been rescued. I never saw Julian again after that, until 5 years ago, When the retired former CEO of the Zhou Corporation, Julian's grandfather, found me, I can inject capital into your uncle's company, on one condition. I looked at the check on the table, thought of all my uncle had done for me over the years, and didn't hesitate. What condition? Get engaged to my grandson, he added, but I'm not forcing you. You have 5 years. If it still doesn't work out between you two, you can choose to leave. The rain had just stopped. I'd been staring into space on the sofa for half the night, a belated chill creeping over me. My head was splitting, and I felt dizzy. Just then, the doorbell rang. I shook my groggy head, staring at the door for several seconds, unable to move. When I decided to leave Julian, I had swiftly moved out of the Zhou estate. This small apartment was something I'd bought with my own salary. It wasn't fancy, but it was enough. Perhaps, from the very beginning, I had a premonition it would end this way, so I'd prepared an escape route. My social circle was small. 4 years, my life had revolved almost entirely around Julian. Very few people knew about this place. I couldn't imagine who would be ringing my doorbell this early. The insistent ringing was making me anxious and irritable. I grabbed the baseball bat from beside the sofa, a gift from my best friend, Ava, worried about me living alone after reading too many crime stories. She had given me a whole arsenal of self-defense tools. I thought they would just gather dust, but it seemed they were finally coming in handy. I peered through the peephole and froze. Why was it Julian? He stood at the door, looking like he hadn't slept, with dark circles under his eyes and a face etched with fatigue. He had been ringing for a long time without a response. A half-smoked cigarette was between his fingers as he paced restlessly. Stella, open the door. When I didn't answer, he started pounding on the door. I leaned against the inside of the door, a flicker of surprise in my heart. For 5 years, Julian had always maintained a mask of superior composure in front of me. The rare times he lost control were always because of Chloe. This look was something new. I stayed silent, pretending I wasn't home. I know you're in there, Julian said with certainty. The soundproofing here wasn't great. If he kept this up, the neighbors would start complaining. With a sigh, I had no choice but to open the door. Julian's eyes scanned my small apartment, then settled on me, his gaze unwavering. Being stared at like that made my heart pound uncontrollably. My body seemed to have developed a conditioned response over the years, feeling a rush of pleasure from his proximity and attention. The sound of my own heartbeat was deafening. I touched my chest, a bitter smile on my lips. Please, stop beating so loud. He'll hear you. Hearing my soft cough, Julian stubbed out his cigarette. His voice was low and raspy. Stella, go and apologize to Chloe. My head snapped up. I looked at the familiar man before me, and felt only an overwhelming sense of strangeness. I used to have hope, but after enough disappointment, I had become numb. Now, I no longer expected him to stand by my side, to defend me unconditionally, but was it so hard just to ask for fair treatment? My head was spinning, my breath hot, symptoms of a fever, but in this moment, I refused to show weakness. I pinched myself hard to stay clear-headed and shot back. On what grounds? Are you saying it's not wrong to curse at someone with such vicious language? Julian's tone was filled with disgust. I don't know what you've become, or maybe this is the real you. Even if you act like this, I will never like you. I hate people who are smug and think they're clever. Is that so? I sneered. The same goes for you. Julian frowned. I'm not negotiating with you. There's a limit to playing hard, too. I've tolerated you for days. Now I'm just asking you to apologize. What is your problem? I did nothing wrong. I'm not apologizing. My head grew dizzier. I looked at him with an expression I'd never shown before. The filter of my childhood memories was too thick. People change. The Julian of today had long forgotten the boy who huddled with me in a cave, a bond forged in a life or death situation. He had forgotten his promise to be good to me forever. For many years, I had thought about that night. If Julian hadn't been with me, I don't think I would have survived. Julian's eyes were cold. I met his gaze, unafraid. Julian, why don't you tell me exactly what I did wrong? He pulled out a cigarette. Just as he was about to light it, he seemed to remember something and snapped it in half with a vicious twist. Chloe has depression. She's psychologically fragile, yet you deliberately made things difficult for her, suppressed her at work, and invalidated her. His eyes swept over me. Her depression has relapsed. She's in the hospital right now. I finally understood what had happened, but the pain in my heart only grew worse. So, whatever Chloe says, goes. The great and mighty CEO Julian, you come here and interrogate me, trying to force me to admit to a mistake I never made. Let me ask you, do you even know the facts? Julian opened his mouth, As if to say something, I cut him off. Don't bother explaining. I know you never even checked. In your eyes, I'm just a gold digger who would do anything to become Mrs. Zhou. Right. A long silence filled the small room. Julian's phone rang. He went to the balcony to answer it. The confrontation seemed to have drained all my energy. I collapsed onto the sofa, unable to hold myself up any longer. I rubbed my feverish head as a sharp, needle-like pain began to spread through my heart. 5 years. And in the end, nothing was left, only coldness and disgust. When Julian came back from the call, his face was even darker. His attitude was unyielding. Chloe's condition has worsened. The person who caused the problem has to be the one to fix it. I expect her to get the apology she deserves. And what if I say no? Hearing that, my own temper flared. I fought back the bitterness in my heart and challenged him. Julian stared at me for a long moment, then asked cruelly, "Do you think you have the right to say no?" I froze. "You think I don't know you only agreed to our engagement for your uncle's company?" He grabbed my chin, his grip tight. Pain shot through me, and I instinctively winced, biting my lip to keep from crying out. I wouldn't show him weakness. Julian's voice was icy, his eyes swirling with emotion. "Stella, you approached me with an agenda from the very beginning, and you expect me to fall for you. Think about your uncle's company before you answer." I never thought that one day Julian would use my uncle to threaten me, all for Chloe. I thought the worst case scenario for us was a peaceful breakup. Seeing the certainty on his face, the confidence that I would yield, I suddenly burst out laughing. Laughter that made my eyes burn and my nose sting. Truly worthy of the head of the Zhou Corporation. Decisive, ruthless, and he knew exactly where to strike. I opened the door, gesturing for him to leave, my face devoid of any emotion. "I understand. You can go now. My humble home isn't big enough for the great CEO Zhou. I hope you'll be magnanimous enough to let me go in the future." I don't know which words set him off, but he slammed the door and was gone. Only then did I finally let go of the breath I had been holding. I collapsed onto the sofa, unable to get up, my vision blurred, and I sank into unconsciousness. In a hazy, half-awake state, I heard the sound of sighing and muttering. I frowned, trying to turn away. A cool object was pressed against my forehead. I grabbed it, letting out a contented sigh before drifting back to sleep. When I woke up, my body still felt weak, but at least the fever had broken. "You're finally awake." Ethan was in the kitchen, making porridge. When he saw me get up, he said in a snarky tone, "Is this how you take care of yourself? If I hadn't happened to be in the area and noticed something was wrong, you might have burned to death in here." "Half a bowl of porridge, thank you," I said weakly. "Still know how to order me around, don't you?" Though his words were sharp, Ethan still brought me a bowl of porridge. The familiar taste reminded me of the old days, when we all used to pull all-nighters working on design projects. Back then, a few of us like-minded students had started a design studio in college. We'd take on small jobs to earn some pocket money. We were always up late, dealing with all sorts of bizarre client requests. If it got too late, we'd cook for ourselves. No one expected that among us. The rich kid who looked least likely to know how to cook would be the best chef. After tasting Ethan's cooking, we were always hoping the young master would grace us with his culinary skills. But Ethan was lazy and rarely cooked. After graduation, the studio members went their separate ways, and we never saw each other again. I was supposed to start a new studio with Ethan, but my uncle's situation changed everything. After that, my life became all about Julian. Looking back now, I realize how wrong I was. The first rule of love is to never love so much that you lose yourself. To lose your identity for someone is a grave mistake. It's no wonder Julian was repulsed. Even if he had liked me, a love so all-consuming would have made anyone retreat. These were lessons I only understood after living through them. Ethan waved a hand in front of my face. "What are you spacing out about? What happened? Tell your big bro, don't flatter yourself," I said, annoyed. "You're 3 months younger than me. Why don't you try calling me big sis for a change?" "Alright, sis," Ethan said shamelessly, grinning. "So, sis, can you tell me now?" Before I could answer, he snorted, "And where is that bastard Julian? You're running a fever, and as your fiancé, he doesn't even know, not a single call or text." Hearing his name, my good mood vanished. Ethan, ever perceptive, sensed the change in my mood and smoothly changed the subject. I knew the process of letting go would be painful, but it was better to rip the band-aid off. "Julian and I broke off the engagement," I said bluntly. Ethan was silent. A moment later, his eyes lit up, and he clapped his hands in delight. Good riddance. He seemed genuinely happy for me. In fact, During the time I was chasing after Julian, Ethan had distanced himself from me. He never said it outright, but I knew he was hostile towards Julian. They were both young masters in the same circle, their families acquainted. I'd only pieced together the gossip after attending a few of Julian's parties. Yeah, good riddance, I said, letting out a heavy breath, trying to psych myself up. Thinking about Chloe's lies, I frowned in disgust. If I were in the wrong, I would apologize without question, but I would not admit to something I hadn't done. Chloe had been airdropped into Julian's company. I only found out her identity later, and even then, I barely knew her. We had very few interactions, and only when work made it unavoidable. If I remembered correctly, it was about a design proposal. Chloe had suddenly come to me with a plan, asking for my help in revising it. I knew she and Julian were childhood friends, and I knew she liked him, but I always kept my personal and professional lives separate. The proposal she submitted was so bad, I suspected she was deliberately trying to provoke me. I forced myself to review the entire thing, despite a gnawing stomachache, attached my revision notes, and told her it was a non-starter. She had to redo it. I thought it was a minor issue. The next thing I knew, I was being berated and threatened by Julian. He could have discovered the truth with a simple check, but he didn't. And Chloe, so sure that Julian would unconditionally stand by her, put on a clumsy, shameless performance. I didn't want to be involved with them anymore. I just wanted to get away. I found the proposal Chloe had submitted, along with my revised version, and pulled the surveillance footage from that day. I sent everything to Julian. If the company's decision maker could approve a proposal like that, they wouldn't need competitors. The Zhou Corporation would collapse on its own. I packed my bags, ready to continue my trip, but Julian called, telling me to come back to the villa. What for? I asked. You left something behind, after 5 years. In that huge villa, the things that were truly mine were pitifully few. A single suitcase had held my entire 5 years. I was sure I hadn't left anything, but Julian insisted. I thought about it. I still needed closure on the matter with Chloe. It was a work day, but Julian, the workaholic, wasn't at the office. He was at home. We had nothing left to say to each other. After a long, silent stalemate, I realized I might miss my flight. What is it? I finally broke the silence. Julian took out a jewelry box and handed it to me. I didn't need to open it to know what was inside. It was a bracelet, to be more specific, a bracelet identical to Chloe's. It was the first gift Julian had ever bought for me. It wasn't a special occasion. He just suddenly gave it to me. I remember being so happy, thinking he was finally reciprocating my feelings, until I saw an identical one on Chloe's wrist. I later found out that he had originally bought it for Chloe. For some reason, on a whim, he bought a second one and casually gave it to me. After I learned the truth, I silently took off the bracelet and never wore it again. Was this really mine? Or was it just a trinket he tossed my way when he was in a good mood? This isn't mine. I didn't take the box. Julian frowned, his eyes filled with confusion. Why don't you want it anymore? I looked at him, amused. There's no why. It was never mine to begin with. So, naturally, I don't want it. I took a deep breath. Instead of dwelling on such a meaningless question, Julian, isn't there anything else you want to say? About Chloe? Perhaps he owed me an apology. I glanced at my phone. I don't have much time. Let's part on good terms. Where are you going? Wherever I go. It's none of your business. Julian suddenly grabbed my wrist, his grip so tight it left a red mark. How is it none of my business? Stella, you wouldn't dare leave without my permission. Let go. We've already broken off the engagement. I struggled, but couldn't break free. Instead of letting go, he tightened his grip. His voice was chilling. The Zhou family is not a place you can come and go as you please. You used every trick in the book to become Mrs. Zhou. Do you think you can just walk away so easily? This isn't child's play. Then what do you want? I gave up struggling, trying to keep my voice calm. You hate me. I'm disappearing from your sight, just like you wanted. Isn't this a happy ending for everyone? I missed my flight. After Julian found out I was leaving, he went crazy and took all my identification documents. He leaned in close. Love. What right do you have to talk about love? Because you approached me with a hidden agenda, deliberately trying to please me. Julian sneered, his eyes dark and unreadable. I stared into his eyes. They were deep and bright, with a sharp curve to them, yet framed by long lashes. They were beautiful eyes. Beautiful eyes. I said softly. It's a shame they're blind. Julian's face darkened, his chest heaving with rage. He was clearly furious. I didn't flinch, just kept looking at him. He was the first to back down. The door slammed shut, and he was gone, exhausted. I leaned against the sofa. I had no idea how to deal with this new Julian. He despised me, yet he refused to let me go. Perhaps this was his way of torturing me. I was practically under house arrest in the villa. I didn't see Julian again after that day. Then, he started coming back every few days. He wouldn't speak to me, just cast a cold glance in my direction now and then. I pretended not to notice. At first, I tried various ways to escape. Eventually, I gave up. I knew that even if I succeeded, a man with Julian's personality wouldn't let me go easily. I had always known he would be angry if he found out the truth about my motives, but I never expected him to be this obsessed with it. For now, I had to play along. I still had my uncle. After my parents died, he was the only family I had left. I couldn't let Julian destroy his company. A few days passed like this. Then, Julian suddenly changed again. He started coming home from work on time every day. He ate dinner with me. I was surprised and secretly on high alert, afraid I would do something wrong and set him off again. But Julian didn't go crazy. In fact, our time together had never been so calm and harmonious. Sometimes, I would feel a sense of daze, as if I were dreaming. This was the married life I had once imagined for us. Countless times. But every time I had that thought, reality would remind me, this was temporary. It was all a facade. Still, in this environment, I felt a little more at ease. Just then, Ethan, having heard about my resignation, sent me an invitation. If you hadn't joined Julian's company and been so devoted, I would have tried to poach you ages ago. I need a design director. For old time's sake, help a brother out. When I didn't reply, Ethan backed down a step. If you're too busy, you can freelance. I couldn't go out right now, but Julian couldn't keep me locked up forever. Being jobless, going to work for Ethan seemed like a good opportunity. Please, sis, pretty please. Seeing his playful message, I couldn't help but smile. I played along, replying, alright, lil bro, with a new job lined up. My mood lifted. I got up to get some water and saw my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. I was stunned for a moment. How long had it been? I couldn't remember the last time I had smiled from the heart. Julian came home drunk again. I was surprised. He had been fine for a while. Why was he suddenly drinking himself into a stupor? Seeing him staggering, I couldn't bear it and went to help him. In the past, he would have struggled and pushed me away. I knew he hated my touch, but this time, he let me support him meekly. He even leaned most of his weight on me as I got close. I was caught off guard and almost fell. The strong scent of perfume mixed with alcohol filled my nose, and I frowned. The perfume was Chloe's signature scent. I felt a wave of nausea. I finally managed to get Julian onto the sofa. As I was about to get him some water, he grabbed my hand from behind. With a pull, I fell onto him. The world spun, and our positions were reversed. He braced his hands on either side of my head, trapping me, and leaned down to look at me. So close, I couldn't help but turn my face away. Let me go. He didn't listen. My hands were pinned above my head. As his face got closer, my heart raced. Just as his lips touched mine, I struggled violently and gagged, turning my head away. Julian, his kiss interrupted, looked furious, maybe because he was drunk and not thinking clearly. He stared at me for a moment and then asked viciously, "You're pregnant. Who's the father?" I gagged again, covering my mouth, feeling sick. Did it ever occur to you that it was the smell on you that made me sick? I couldn't be bothered to argue with a drunk, but Julian misinterpreted my silence as a confession. "Tell me, who is it? Is it Ethan's?" he asked, his voice raw, his eyes red, his hands, pinning me down, were trembling. He was determined to force a name out of me. I found it laughable. He was acting so possessive, as if I had cheated on him. "That's right, I'm pregnant, and it's Ethan's," I said deliberately, word by word, hearing me admit it. Julian's eyes widened in horror, the light in them dying out. He clenched his fists, struggling to contain his rage. It was the first time I had ever seen him so out of control. How strange, but we were just torturing each other. I closed my eyes, ready to face his wrath. Crash. The sound of shattering glass exploded next to my ear. I opened my eyes. Julian's right hand was covered in blood. The glass coffee table was in pieces on the floor. Without a word, Julian staggered into the bathroom. The pressure was gone. I let out a breath of relief. Thinking back on the scene, a wave of fear washed over me. Drunk people have no reason. I shouldn't have provoked him like that. Thank God he had restrained himself. I was already prepared to leave. I didn't want any more complications. The phone rang. "Hello, Stella, your uncle's in the hospital." I hung up and rushed to the hospital. The surgery was already over. My uncle was lying in bed, with my aunt nagging him about the doctor's orders. Stella, you're here. You look so thin, my uncle said, smiling happily when he saw me. I quickly looked him over. Seeing that he was okay, the weight in my heart finally lifted. Uncle, as the word left my lips, I realized my voice was trembling. It's nothing, just an old problem, he reassured me. I didn't want to think about what Julian would do when he found out I'd left. I stayed at the hospital for a few days, chatting with my uncle and taking care of him. Over the years, my uncle, pitying my childhood tragedy and fearing for my mental health, had spent so much energy on me, even more than on his own child. Because of this, my relationship with my cousin was strained. She always felt that I had stolen her father's love. I saw my cousin standing at the door, hesitating to come in. I made an excuse about having something to do and left. It was a good opportunity to check out Ethan's new office, my future workplace. Though Ethan usually acted like a carefree playboy, he was very reliable when he got serious. I nodded in satisfaction, praising him generously. Very impressive, Boss Ethan. Of course, I told you, stick with me and you'll never go hungry, Ethan said, a corner of his lip tilting up as he shot me a teasing look. He was always preening. I laughed. Yes, of course. All right, business is done. Time for personal matters. I looked at him, confused. So, sis, you want to tell me how I became a father so quickly? Ethan asked, his eyes fixed on me. Sis, you're ruining my reputation, he continued. He had me there. I rubbed my nose, embarrassed. I'll buy you dinner. Is Boss Ethan's reputation only worth one meal? He asked, feigning hurt. Then what do you want? Give me a chance to pursue you. Ethan's tone became serious. You rejected me in college. Now you're single. And I'm single. Stella, let's give it a try. Under Ethan's pleading gaze, I couldn't help but agree to seriously consider it. In college, surrounded by a group of like-minded friends, I had been happy, but somewhere along the way, the genuine smile had faded from my face. Ethan was right. If you're with the right person, you wouldn't be in a constant state of emotional turmoil. It had been a while since I decided to give up on Julian. I should take a new step forward. When I got back to the hospital, I panicked. My uncle wasn't in his room. I asked around and found out he had been moved to a VIP room upstairs. As I reached the door, I heard my uncle and Julian talking happily. I stopped in my tracks. My suspicions were confirmed, but all I felt was a weary resignation. What was he doing here now? Uncle, you rest. I have something to talk to Julian about. My uncle waved at us cheerfully. Go on, you two lovebirds. I paused for a second, then pulled Julian outside. What are you doing here? I'm grateful for the room upgrade. I'll transfer you the money. Julian looked at me deeply, then handed me back my documents. I'm sorry, Stella. It seems I've been wrong about so many things. Grandpa said I would regret it one day. He was right. I do regret it. I don't want you to leave me. Can we not break the engagement? He gritted his teeth, forcing his emotions down. The baby, have the baby. I'll treat him as my own. I seriously wondered if Julian had hit his head. A man as territorial and obsessed with cleanliness as him, saying he would raise another man's child. Julian, you don't actually think this makes you sound devoted, do you? I cut off his performance. Julian stood there, stunned. No, Stella, I had a weak constitution as a child. After that accident, I had a high fever for days. When I woke up, my memories were hazy. I forgot a lot of things. I sneered. So, don't tell me you mistook Chloe for the person who saved you when you were 8, and all these years of indulging her and protecting her were just out of gratitude. What if I said yes? Julian's face went pale. He opened his mouth, but it took him a long time to find his voice. I know you might not believe me, but it's true. I'm not lying. So what if it is? I retorted. Julian, do you think I'm upset because you didn't defend me? He still didn't understand what was bothering me. That encounter in our childhood had indeed made me remember him. Later, by a twist of fate, we got engaged. I had asked him if he remembered what happened, and he had confidently said Chloe was the one. He saw me as a monster, a gold digger who would do anything for money. It hurt, but since I had promised his grandfather, I had to fulfill my commitment for 5 years. I thought if I just proved myself through my actions, one day Julian would see my heart. At first, he said he only saw Chloe as a sister. I believed him. I worked hard to study difficult subjects just to have something in common with him. When I liked someone, I gave it my all. I didn't care about the previous scandals, because they were just rumors spread by starlets for publicity. Until I saw the photo of him and Chloe kissing, my heart finally died. Julian said he had amnesia, that he mistook her for me. I could accept that. But even if he hadn't been mistaken, even if it had been me he was protecting all these years, I still couldn't accept him. Can you just ignore right and wrong for someone you like, Julian? When you wrongly accused me, when you forced me to apologize to Chloe, Julian suddenly pulled me into a tight hug, cutting me off. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. That long, overdue apology, I finally heard it, but I felt no joy. I couldn't describe the feeling, it was just emptiness and release. I gently pushed him away, my eyes tracing his features. Julian, it's enough, let's just leave it at that. After that, I never saw Julian again. Ethan, however, started visiting me frequently. We see each other at work all day, and you still come over after. Aren't you tired of me? Ethan shook his head. Of course not, I can't get enough of you. I wish I could stick to you every second. I laughed. You're so annoying. What if I get tired of you? Not allowed. Ethan childishly picked me up. The probation period has been 3 months. Sis, can I be promoted? With Ethan around, I was genuinely happy. Even my colleagues said I looked years younger. I wasn't old to begin with, but my constant emotional turmoil over Julian had made me gloomy and lifeless. Now that I had finally let go of the past, my heart was light. A young mindset makes a person look young. Never knew a younger guy could be this good. The thought popped into my head, and I started laughing at my own joke. Ethan, displeased, gave me a light bite on the lip. What are you laughing at, sis? No more brushing me off this time. Okay, no more brushing you off. It's a pleasure to meet you, boyfriend. Ethan, ecstatic, pulled me into a tight embrace, kissing me until I was dizzy. But his excitement lasted less than a minute before he found out he had to go on a business trip. He looked at me with puppy dog eyes. In the end, I had to coax him with a lot of embarrassing sweet talk. Ethan was gone for a week. I usually found his chatter annoying, but without his constant muttering, I felt a little lonely. I missed him, so I sent him a few flirty messages. I buried myself in work for the rest of the day. When I looked up again, the city lights were already on. I was the only one left in the office. Since I'd been with Ethan, I hadn't gone home this late alone. My apartment wasn't far from the office. I was on a voice call with him the whole way. Almost home. Just then, a blinding light flashed before my eyes. I immediately felt a sense of alarm. Before I could react, someone rushed out from the dark shadows of the trees. It was Chloe. She was holding a knife, a sharp fruit knife, glinting coldly under the streetlight. I quickly assessed the situation and started running, but Chloe, in her unhinged state, lunged with surprising speed. In the nick of time, a sharp cry cut through the air. The smell of blood filled my nose. Julian, who had been gone for so long, was standing in front of me. His right arm was covered in blood. In his left hand was the fruit knife he had just wrestled away. Seeing that she had stabbed Julian, Chloe broke down. I didn't mean to. Julian, I'm sorry, I didn't want to stab you. Then who did you want to stab? Julian asked through gritted teeth. I called an ambulance and the police. By the time Julian was taken to the hospital, my back was soaked in cold sweat. Stella, Ethan had rushed back. He pulled me into a tight hug. Feeling his warmth, I finally seemed to come back to myself. Ethan, I was so scared. Don't be afraid, I'm here. He held me, patiently comforting me with childish words. I'm never going on a business trip again. I just tightened my arms around him. By the time I finished my statement, it was very late. At the police station, I saw Chloe, still just as delusional. She stared at me, her voice filled with hatred. Why aren't you dead yet? All of this was supposed to be mine. Julian is mine. Why did you have to show up? Let's go. I didn't want to listen to her madness. I wearily pulled Ethan away. Later, I learned from Ethan that Chloe's family had moved next to the Zhou family specifically for them. Chloe was groomed from the start to be Julian's wife. Her mother had instilled in her the idea that Julian was hers, that she would marry into the Zhou family. That's why she had impersonated me, becoming Julian's savior. Her entire family had benefited from the connection. Old Mr. Zhou, a veteran of the business world, had seen through these little tricks. But since Julian had no other playmates, he had allowed Chloe to be around, but only as a playmate. She was never qualified to be his wife. That's why he had been searching for a suitable bride for Julian. By a twist of fate, he had chosen me. I still don't know why. Maybe because I had a weakness, my uncle. That made me easy to control, but none of that mattered anymore. While Julian was in the hospital, I visited him every day. If he hadn't blocked that knife, I would have been the one in that bed. As a designer, an injury to my hand could have meant I'd never be able to pick up a pen again. So, I was truly grateful to Julian. The Zhou family wasn't short on money, but Ethan still brought him a ton of supplements. His jealousy simmering as he accompanied me to the hospital each day. After a while, Julian was mostly recovered but refused to be discharged. I had a pretty good idea what was going on in his mind, so I sent Ethan, who was constantly clinging to me, away and had a talk with Julian. Julian, I'm grateful you took that knife for me, because of my childhood memories. I once had feelings for you. When I like someone, I give it my all. When I realize the feeling is gone, I walk away. My feelings back then were overwhelming, and I didn't consider your perspective. Everything I did for you, I did willingly. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a small ear peeking through the crack of the slightly ajar door. I secretly smiled. Such a clingy puppy. I'm paying the price for my own past feelings, and I'm doing it with my head held high. But now, I found the person I want to spend my life with. I hope you can let go of the past too. Julian turned his face away. After a long moment, he managed a soft and then asked, how can you be sure he's the right one to spend your life with? I can feel it in my heart. Even if he stops loving me one day, it's okay. I'll leave on my own. Love, friendship, no emotion is static. It changes over time. I sighed. That's why people break up and get back together. Why they might go through several relationships before finding the right person. It's why so many friendships are left in the past. We walked the same path for a while, and that was enough. I had said everything I wanted to say. As my hand rested on the doorknob, I heard a soft voice behind me. Stella, I hope you'll be happy from now on. I didn't turn back, just gave a slight nod. The moment I stepped out, Ethan pulled me into a passionate kiss. Our breaths tangled together in a chaotic mess. When he finally let me go, he whispered in my ear, I will never stop loving you. You're mine for life. I slipped my hand into his, intertwining our fingers. Yes, I said. Who decided that being kind meant being silent? If you've ever had to silence your own voice to keep the peace, or dim your light so others could feel bright, let me know in the comments that you're done playing small. Your truth has a right to take up space, and their karma is long overdue. Subscribe to Red Karma for more stories of unapologetic power. It's your turn to write the ending.